A 24-armed hunter, threatened with extinction, is set to get protection. Sunflower sea stars, hit by a climate-fueled pandemic, play a key role in keeping marine ecosystems balanced. Sunflower sea stars, huge starfish that until recently thrived in waters up and down the west coast of North America, are threatened with extinction and should be protected under the Endangered Species Act, federal officials said Wednesday. The starfish have been devastated by a wasting syndrome that has been linked to the effects of climate change. It killed more than 90% of sunflower sea stars from 2013 to 2017, in what officials described as the largest marine wildlife disease outbreak on record. The sickness starts with lethargy and lesions followed by tissue decay. Starfish's limbs drop off and they die within days, leaving a gooey pile. "We think it's likely exacerbated by the increasing ocean temperature," said Sadie Wright, a protected species biologist with National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration Fisheries who worked on the status review for the sunflower sea star. Rapid changes in temperatures, another consequence of climate change, also play a role. The starfish's collapse appears to be a factor behind a domino effect of ecological destruction in California's kelp forests. Sunflower sea stars gorge on sea urchins, which have skyrocketed in abundance since the starfish disappeared. The vast numbers of sea urchins started overgrazing kelp, scientists believe, contributing to die-offs of kelp forests. When you remove the sea stars, you see the cascading effects, Ms. Wright said. Sunflower sea stars can sport some 24 limbs and span more than 3 feet, about a meter, from tip to tip. They have been documented from Baja California to the Aleutian Islands. While scientists estimate that 600 million individuals remain worldwide, that number represents less than 10% of the abundance before 2013. Scientists now struggle to find them south of Washington, Ms. Wright said. The species is already considered critically endangered by the International Union for Conservation of Nature's Red List of Threatened Species. Some 20 other species of sea stars have also been hit by the wasting syndrome, though sunflower sea stars are thought to be among the worst affected. The proposal to list sunflower sea stars as threatened follows a 2021 petition by the Center for Biological Diversity, a nonprofit advocacy group. "I'm ecstatic that the sunflower sea star will get the safeguards of the Endangered Species Act," said Miyoko Sakashita, the center's Oceans Program Director. "A climate-fueled pandemic nearly wiped them out, and I'm optimistic that a threatened listing will assist their recovery. One way that could happen is by making new funding available to research the mysterious pathogen that scientists believe is behind the wasting syndrome. A listing decision could also lead to more protections from water pollution, dredging and other coastal construction projects. The federal government will also have to develop a recovery plan for the sea stars," Ms. Sakashita said, "which can mean more focus on disease prevention and even climate change. A final determination will be made in the next year. If listed, the sunflower sea star would be the first sea star to be federally protected. A lot of people are familiar with this species, it's something they've seen when they were exploring tide pools as kids," Ms. Wright said. "So there's going to be a lot of surprise that this species we once thought of as common is now being considered for listing under the Endangered Species Act. The missing 24-limbed animals that could help rescue the ocean's forest." Scientists say that reintroducing the fast-moving predators to the west coast could help control the spread of sea urchins that are devouring kelp. The kelp forests off the west coast are dying, and with their decline, an entire ecosystem of marine plants and animals is at risk. A large starfish with an appetite for sea urchins could come to the rescue. One reason for the disappearing kelp is the tremendous expansion of the sea urchin population that feeds on it, including an estimated 10,000% increase in their numbers over the past few years in a reef surveyed off the coast of Oregon. And it may be that sea urchins have multiplied because one of their chief predators, the sunflower sea star, has been nearly wiped out by disease. Scientists prefer sea star to starfish because the animals are not fish. A team of scientists suggests that the population explosion in sea urchins could not have happened if sunflower sea stars had been there to prey on them, and that restoring the population of the colorful creatures may help in the recovery of the kelp forest and the ecosystem it supports. The study appeared last month in Proceedings of the Royal Society B. Scientists estimate that there once were as many as 5 billion sunflower sea stars along the coast from Alaska to Baja California. They come in varying shades of purple, brown, orange and yellow, and can grow as large as 3 feet across, with up to 24 arms. They move quickly, at least for a sea star, up to 200 feet in an hour. But sea star wasting disease, possibly caused by a virus, has killed most of them. To test whether introducing captive-bred sunflower sea stars could help, the researchers collected 24 sunflower sea stars and 300 purple sea urchins near the San Juan Islands in Washington and observed them under experimental conditions, recording hunting activity and food preferences. These were healthy sea stars, survivors unaffected by the wasting disease, possibly because they were resistant to the illness. The researchers hope that their offspring will share their characteristics. The scientists found that sea stars were passionate consumers of both juvenile and large adult sea urchins. When sea stars attack, urchins fight back, often pinching off pieces of the sea star's arms and making the attacker back off. If the sea star can persist, it surrounds the urchin and ingests it through the mouth on its underside. After about 18 to 24 hours, it spits out the empty shell, having digested the soft parts, including the roe, which is also a delicacy among sea otters and human sushi eaters. Is re-establishing the sunflower sea star population with captive-bred animals practical? Aaron W. E. Galloway, who is an associate professor of marine biology at the University of Oregon and an author of the paper, believes it could be. Just a few sunflower sea star individuals can produce millions of larvae, he said. If they are successful, he says, even a small restoration effort could easily lead to millions of sea stars returning to the wild. Dr. Galloway acknowledged that there are many other factors besides the diminishing sea star population that affect the health of the kelp forest, like climate change and increased periodic heat waves. And he makes no claim that a healthy sea star population is the ultimate solution. There are a lot of things you might try to do, he said. But the restoration of sea stars is one of the most efficient levers we can pull. If we can help sea stars recover naturally, it could have ecosystem scale effects, and it works without human intervention after it gets started. Scientists single out a suspect in starfish carnage: warming oceans. In 2013, starfish, including the morning sun star, the richly hued ochre star and the sunflower star, whose limbs can span 4 feet across, started dying by the millions along the Pacific coast from Mexico to Alaska. They were succumbing to a wasting disease. It began with white lesions on their limbs, the dissolution of the surrounding flesh, a loss of limbs and finally death. Understanding, let alone solving, the problem would take research. One day, shortly after the epidemic began, Drew Harville, a professor of ecology and evolutionary biology at Cornell University who had been sounding the alarm about the disease, received a curious letter. I received a $400 check in the mail from a group of schoolchildren from Arkansas, Drive. Harville said. These kids were so upset about the idea of starfish disappearing from the oceans that they went out and they did this fundraiser and raised $400 for us to help in our research. I never asked them to do this. They just did it. Dr. Harville matched it with her own money, and a donor kicked in quite a bit more. That was what funded some of our early surveys, she said. These kids, who none of them had been to the Pacific Ocean, but they just needed to know those stars were there. One of the ultimate results of the children's donation, a paper that sheds some light on the decline of the starfish, also known as sea stars, was published Wednesday in the journal Science Advances. The main suspect are warming oceans. In 2013, parts of the Pacific Ocean became unusually warm as part of a broader marine heat wave, nicknamed the blob, that would last through 2015 and that was very likely exacerbated by human-caused global warming. But while the ocean warmed, it didn't warm evenly, making it hard to tell if the heat wave was contributing to the starfish deaths. In the study, which was led jointly by Cornell and the University of California, Davis, Drive, Harville and her colleagues compiled data from citizen scientists and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Then, they compared changes in the sunflower star population with changes in ocean temperature during the outbreak. While the disease affected 20 species of starfish, the researchers focused on the sunflower star because it was especially hard hit and because there was good historical data on its population before the epidemic. The researchers found that the die-off of the sunflower star matched the pattern of heat spreading through the ocean. According to Rebecca Vega-Thurber, an associate professor of environmental microbiology at Oregon State University, who is not involved in the study, what's really exciting about this paper is the really strong correspondence between this temperature anomaly that occurred during that year when the sea stars started dying. Everywhere the warming went, the sunflower stars sickened and died. The study showed a correlation between warming temperatures and the spread of the disease, not a direct cause. But it corroborates a hypothesis that was initially questioned because the virus that researchers think is responsible also shows up in healthy sea stars. That trigger, in the case of this paper, seems to be temperature. Drive, Vega-Thurber said. Dr. Vega-Thurber pointed out that the presence of a particular pathogen does not necessarily mean a disease will develop. For example, if you've had chickenpox, you are carrying the virus that causes shingles. Roughly a third of carriers will develop the disease, but 2/3 won't. It takes something to prompt its emergence. Heat has also been implicated as a trigger in the spread of a fungus that is wiping out frog and toad populations around the globe, as well as in coral diseases. In fact, when corals bleach or lose their symbiotic algae because of warming oceans, it's typically disease that ultimately kills them. There are things we can do to help marine life. Drive, Harville said. We can replant seagrass beds and protect mangroves, for instance. But, ultimately, we need to stop climate change, she said. The world's oceans have absorbed more than 90% of the atmospheric heat humans have caused by releasing greenhouse gases. While some affected sea stars have begun to return to American waters on the West Coast, the sunflower star has not returned off the lower 48 states. But last summer, on the south coast of Alaska, researchers saw a glimmer of hope: the reappearance of sunflower stars, which had disappeared from Prince William Sound during the outbreak. We don't know where exactly they came from, said Brenda Kohner, a professor of marine biology at the University of Alaska, Fairbanks, who was not involved in the Science Advances study. They were pretty small and we don't know if they're going to survive. So we're really curious about what we'll see next summer. If they make a comeback, the Arkansas students, who are now teenagers, will likely be delighted.